I have taken a picture of some charcoal pieces aligned in a grid 3x3. So when I initially took the picture with my camera, it would have lots of shadows in and looks a bit dull and the contrast isn't great. So I'm going to use Picasa just to enhance all that. So I'm just zooming in a little bit here because it looks as though the camera is a bit fuzzy, but I think it's okay. It's just I need to change the light in Picasa. So initially I auto contrasted, as you can see there. Now what I want to do is I think I'm going to use a fill light just to bring the light out and just to flatten it a little bit. As you can see, that my camera has picked up the subtleties of the charcoal, and this is just enhancing it. And as you can see, it makes the white a little more uniform as well. So it just starts to get into that white background format that I want to make it easier to play around with in ArtRage. So here, although I took a picture that was a square, the angle that the camera was at means it wasn't completely square. So I'm just fitting a square as close to the edges as I can. Doesn't need to be too accurate. And as long as my original picture wasn't really skew, then this will just work fine. As you can see, there's a little bit around the edges of the square, but that's okay. So I want to try and get rid of those shadows if I can do, and then all those little blotches, those little bits of charcoal, as you can see, in between the charcoal pieces. So I think I'm just playing around with the lights. There is one that works really well. I think it's highlights. There you can see I'm pushing it up and you can almost see that the white is tightening around the charcoal pieces, which is what I want. I want to make the background as white as I possibly can, because I'm going to use a Photoshop filter in ArtRage called Kill White to remove all the white background, so that I can then save as a PNG. So it will save all the transparency, and I'll then be able to import the charcoal bits a lot better. So here I'm just saving a copy because I think I'm moderately happy. I'm still noting those shadows at the bottom of those charcoal bits, which I may need to sort out later on, but we'll see how that goes. So here I have got a ArtRage 32-bit version which I'm loading up, as you can see on my desktop. Now this is because the Photoshop filters that are compatible, one of them being Kill White in ArtRage, only work under the 32-bit version, but that's okay, it doesn't really matter. The GUI, as you can see, is quite big. I don't really know what that is, but I'm not too bothered. It's probably relating to 32-bit version. I'm running on Windows Surface Pro at the moment, but for what I want to do, it doesn't really matter. I can always scale them down if I really wanted to. So I'm going to go to my pictures directory and load in my new charcoal enhanced image, which hopefully is going to give me a nice template, which that looks pretty white to me. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure it is white, so I'm going to color pick, and to see where you see the bottom right hand corner, there we go, I color picked white, and you see the little indication of the color is gone right out into the corner of the white spectrum, so I think that's pretty damn white. So now I'm going to go to the filters section. So I've got a whole load of Photoshop filters that I've managed to find works nicely with ArtRage. Not all of them work, there are only a few that do work with ArtRage, but that's okay, I'm not too bothered really. I don't tend to use filters at all, but I was told on the ArtRage forum about this Kill White after I posted my last brush tutorial, because I was using the magic wand tool in the selection to try and take out as much background, but it didn't really work that well. But this Kill White seems to work pretty well. Even if the background isn't completely absolutely white, it will still take out a lot of other stuff. So here we go, it's doing its stuff at the moment. There we go. Right, that looks reasonable, potentially. Okay, so now Kill White has done its stuff, I'm in a good position just to export the PNG now. I'm using the canvas settings here just to set the background to see that Kill White has kind of killed most things in the background. So I'm just increasing the opacity with black. Yeah, it doesn't look too bad. You can see there's a few bits of shadows there, which I will do later. But I think that'll do for now. That's okay. Kill White has seemingly done its job pretty well and has worked a lot better than using the magic wand tool just to select the background. So now export to PNG to maintain the transparency. Now opened up the 64-bit version of ArtRage, so I can import the image I've just created and play around with it. So I now know I'm importing this PNG. The background has been taken out pretty nicely. Now it's time to start to arrange these into a slightly better 3x3 grid. They're not a million miles away because I placed them roughly when I took the picture on a standard square white card. But I'm going to use the grid now to just position these a little bit better. I find it easier for the grid to probably choose a black colour, it just stands out a little bit better for this. And now I'm going to use the select tool for just cutting these elements out, because I know that the background is now transparent, so it's easy to cut these things out now. I can pretty much just draw a circle around each one and cut it and then paste it. So we go, just pretty much drawing a circle around that one, cutting it, and then when I paste it, it will create a new layer. So now I'm going to do that for each single charcoal piece. So I will now speed this up. Okay, so that's everything now on its own layer, so I'm just going to go down through and just position each one in. Again, I'll speed this one up. Okay, that's pretty much it now, I think. So to make all these things easier to handle, I'm now going to create a group and stick all these things under it. Mainly, oh, there's Tycho again. Mainly to make things easier, so I can merge them all in really easily and treat them all as one unit. Right, I want to merge all of these in, but first of all I'll just create a duplicate of the group in case ever I want to treat each individual layer again. So just make that group invisible. It's always there, and then just merge all these in. So it may be about ready now, so I'm going to export the image file. So this is my newly positioned on the grid image, and let's rename it to something a little more meaningful now, rather than just the default image name that came out of my camera. So something, because I've got two ideas about this. One is to export the actual real charcoal color value, so this is why I'm calling this charcoal black, and then another one where I'm going to export them as a red color, so then ArtRage will be able to match whatever colour you've picked to the charcoal brush that you import. So this is why I'm locking transparency here, because my idea is, now that I've saved the black charcoal, is to create all these as red. So locking transparency means that your paint only goes within those charcoal pieces. So I don't really need the grid anymore. So I've set it to the pen option, which means that you get a nice clear colour coming through. That's why I did that. Oh, hang on a sec. Now this is highlighted an issue that I've completely forgotten about now. You can see that those shadows are a bit more pronounced when I'm starting to paint over in red now. So I need to sort this one out. So I've turned transparency off there, and I just need to use the eraser tool to go in and take those shadows out. As you can see, if I put a black background at the bottom, those shadows become much more apparent. So I'm going to leave the black background on and zoom in and just trim these off. You notice I've got softness all the way up. That's so that the edges aren't going to be too harsh when I trim them off, because I don't think it would look quite right if I do that. So that looks alright, and then it's just a case of going through each one that now obviously doesn't look wrong. Now I've got the black background on. Okay, I've saved the previous charcoal PNG with some shadows, but I'm not too bothered about that, to be honest. I think because it's that colour of black, then you won't really notice the shadows when you're using them. But with this one, because you can set it to any colour, the little shadows there would actually make a difference, and I'm not sure if it would look that great. Not what I really want from this brush anyway. And as you can see there's little kind of lighter areas around that charcoal bit, which indicates that there's some bits that Kill White didn't quite manage to grab hold of. So I think I may just need to go in and just trim those down a little bit. But again, I'm probably not too bothered about it. It's just a little bit of noise with the black charcoal brush which I've just saved, and not really that bothered about it. But it's difficult to see. When I was fairly zoomed out, you can't really see those bits there. But it's only when I start to get zoomed in, and especially when I start to... Oh, there we go. Actually, no, I've just have saved that again. I've just saved over the top of what I originally exported. So I did just take the shadows out anyway. Right, so I've locked the transparency back on again, and now I'm painting all in red over the top. And as you can see, you can't notice those shadows now. They're not really apparent at all. So that's just making all these just a uniform red. That looks alright. Turn the transparency off, and now this, as you can see, those little areas that Kill White didn't kill are more noticeable now. So I'm just gonna go in with the eraser and just take them out, and the other couple of bits and bobs as well. I think that'll pretty much do it. I think that's clean enough for what I want. So let's export that as a PNG. This time I will call it charcoal red to differentiate from my standard charcoal colour. Right, so the next thing is to import the two PNGs which I've saved as a sticker. So I can then start using them and manipulating them as part of my sticker brush. So I need to think about what category it wants to go in. With stickers I'm not too fussy, to be honest, because the categorization is more important, I think, in the sticker brush. So I'm going to stick it in my art. Maybe I should have put it in my photos because strictly it was a photo, but I'm not too bothered. I'm quite lazy sometimes. So let's just name this something meaningful. Again, for consistency, why not just call it charcoal black again? So import my new image that I've created. There we go, and then change the columns and the rows to fit with the obvious grid that I've created there, and turn the shadow off because I never have the shadow on. I may explore that later at some other stage, maybe in a later tutorial, but not this time. So this one I'm now creating, which is importing my charcoal red version. Now I have an idea, I might want to do something slightly different. I've been really only loading it into the upper layer using the colour, which is just going to use the PNG image. But what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to experiment by just adding a texture in and just seeing what that does. I've got some pictures that I've taken from my camera of different areas in my garden, some bark pictures which I thought may be quite nice. But initially I thought maybe a cloud might work okay. So let's just open that. So I've opened the colour picture, and then when it imports it, it turns it into black and white because that's how it works out its different texture values. I'm not sure if I'm totally happy with using the cloud. My gut feeling is that it may not work too well. And I think as bark almost looks a bit like charcoal, I might want to just use that. So there's some pictures I've taken around my garden, and I know that there's some bark ones towards the bottom, the later ones I took. So I think I want to import a bark-like thing. I can see one there which is some good examples. So I've imported it there. You can see there's a nice texture there, a nice bark texture. So I think I'm going to use that and just see how it comes out. Might when I create this brush, it's going to come out with some nice blodges of texture which may look as if paint has just been put down. As you can see there, I'm just having a look at the stickers. It had a little bit of grey around some of those bits at the bottom, which indicates it hasn't quite taken all transparency out, but I'm not too bothered about that. It's fine. So now let's create a standard, any canvas will do, and go into sticker brush. It's set on hairbrush at the moment, which I do find quite useful for creating some of my art. There for creating hair, no surprise. So that was set on probably some kind of image related brush, so which would turn it into a standard brush, the most that it could do. But I want it to have a bit of variation in it, so I want to turn it into an object spray, which just sprays things around a little bit, gives a little bit of randomness. My idea was just I wanted almost a pile of charcoal bits on top, which may create quite a nice texture. So I'm just playing around with this at the moment. As you can see, the original colour that I've saved is just coming through absolutely fine. It's not coming out quite as fast as I may want at the moment. I kind of have an idea I want to, so this is why I'm changing the spray rate. I'm turning that one up a little bit. So I want the charcoal bits just to come out a little bit faster. Playing around the scale here, the base scale, just to increase the size. Starting to notice a little bit of colourful pigmentation on the charcoal. I suspect that's just a combination of my photo, going through Picasa, all those kind of things. Even using Kill White may have taken as you can see, Kill White's taken a bit of the original colour out. It's left them slightly transparent, but again, I'm not too bothered about this. A lot of creating a brush is almost to accept what you've got and playing around with it, because you can get some unexpected results at times. So I've just changed the colour selection there, and you can see the pigmentation on the charcoal pieces was slightly different, which actually may work as a benefit overall. This may be a happy accident that I have to get some nice variations in colour when I'm laying these things down. So I've an idea, I might just want to play with the rotation, so I'm increasing that randomness, which means that it's more likely to, there's a higher level of randomness involved for the rotation. and just playing around with the size, just to kind of have a feel for getting like a stack of charcoal pieces. So I'm starting to get a feel for this now. As you can see, I'm starting to lay them on top of each other, and there's a texture that's starting to come out, which is probably something I wouldn't have anticipated when I originally thought about creating this. You have an original idea at the start, but once you start playing around with things, the brush tends to change in strange directions that you never thought about. Playing around with the colour a little bit, seeing what I can get a slight variation. Even though I saved it as a black colour, I can still get a slight variation in colour with it. As you'll see in my next brush that I create using my charcoal red, I'll get the exact colour variation I want to. For whatever colour I select will be the colour it comes out as. So here I'm just playing around, stacking things up, changing the scale a little bit. I'm thinking I might want a little bit more pen pressure scale variation involved here. So there I'm just setting the scale to a very small percentage, and then the maximum scale is quite large for when I'm changing the pressure. As you can see, I'm changing the pressure up and down there, which I think looks a bit more interesting. Just playing around with things. Again, you can see a little smiley face just for the sheer hell of it. Just zooming in to see how detailed things look. You can see the pigmentation when you zoom in quite a lot. Now changing the colour. I've no idea what colour it's going to turn out. And then just filling some gaps in, just building some textures up, seeing what it looks like. Looks promising. I think that actually looks quite interesting. The pigmentation works well with the slight outline that it's got with the charcoal bits, and also this little bit of texture that's come through with the charcoal. Changing the colour again, adding in a bit more layer. I think I'm quite happy with this. I think this could be an interesting texture for something I might want to use in the future. Yeah, the texture looks okay zoomed in. So let's create a new preset. So let's get the sample image. So that would be the icon that's displayed representing this brush. So I've got a whole pile load of textures in there, so I'm just going to overlay this, take a little window snapshot of an area that may be representative of the brush potentially. If I ever forget in the future what this roughly is, I can have a quick idea. With the icon representing it. This time I'm going to stick it in the categories photos, which makes a bit more sense. So as you can see, I stuck the original stickers into my art, but I'm not too bothered about that. But this is the most important one, I think, is sticking them in a decent category when you create the sticker brush. So I think there's a bit more scope for doing stuff with this, so I'm just playing around a little bit more. Just took down the offset there, so I don't get too much variation in the position of each charcoal bit. change just the luminance. As you can see, the luminance there is just going from black to white, which actually looks quite interesting as a texture. There's like interesting variations going on there. Maybe I'll think about changing the saturation values and seeing what comes out. Yeah, I don't really like the look of that. The pigmentation doesn't really work well for the high levels of random saturation. Just playing around with setting up an image brush. As you can see, it's getting quite meta now. The fact that I've created charcoal pieces to create some kind of weird charcoal brush. But as you can see, it's just laying the charcoal bits alongside each other quite closely, but it's quite an interesting texture that it's coming out with there. But this has kind of given me an idea for what I might want to use when I import my charcoal red. I don't think I'm going to use this to save away for just a black charcoal colour. I think it may be more interesting when I come to use a charcoal red one. Again, some quite interesting textures have come through there. Right, so now it's time to find my charcoal red and import that one. So I've just changed the sticker that I'm using, so all the variation settings I've just been playing with are the same. So as you can see, the general concept of them laying down the charcoal bits is the same. Now this, as I explained before, I attached a bark texture to it. So that's why you can see a texture coming through there, which almost looks like just dabbing paint down with a paintbrush. And that kind of looks quite interesting. I may already be kind of quite happy with this brush. It's just an extra level of complexity that the texture aspect of this sticker adds to it. You have the original charcoal texture, and then as you can see, it kind of looks like splodgy paint. That's just the bark coming through. Just increasing the size of my brush to see what happens. Big splodgy wads of paint coming out there. Right, I think I'm happy with it. Let's get the little icon. There's plenty of scope there, that'll do. And give it a reasonable name. Again, change the store size off, I never save that. Give it something meaningful. I think I'll call it something like charcoal bark. I just want to play around with this a little bit more. There may be some more scope for doing things here. Just changing the scale, I just think I want to have a variation in pen pressure again. See what that does. So setting the minimum, the base scale quite low and then the highest quite high. You can see the different pen pressure really coming through there. Thought I would go for setting it the rotation due to the direction that your pen is, which may make that's quite interesting in a way. It is quite interesting. You can see how the rotation is changing there. It's just not remaining uniform. It's a case of where the direction that my brush is moving in. So you get kind of a nice swishy type texture there. And as I always like to do, really bump the rotation right up so you get things moving around a lot. So really that's kind of probably negate the stroke direction that I'm using for the rotation, but I don't really care. Again, it looks kind of fluffy and interesting. And then just building some texture up just to see how it may look, with it all kind of shooting around. So I've got quite a few bits and bobs going on here. I've got the original charcoal texture, I've got the rotation coming in, and I've got the bark texture as well, and then also I've got some pen pressure going on. All of that in combination, and of course with the colour variation that I can also choose as well from the colour picker. There's lots of variables going in here. And of course just picking out the random charcoal bit as well. All those little bits add together to create something that is quite interesting and could be used quite in an interesting way for a later painting. So I think I'm pretty happy with this, and then this will probably be my last one relating to charcoal pieces. Doing usual stuff, just taking a snapshot of it and giving it a meaningful name. And that's it. That's how I've created charcoal sticker brushes using pictures of charcoal pieces.